Vampire Diaries is a fantastic series with phenomenal lore and amazing world building. Its universe is full of amazing creatures and awesome characters, except for Legacy, which is a god-awful series, and I have no clue why that show is even on air still, to be honest. Regardless, we're here to talk about the vampires of this universe in the first of a series of videos where I will be explaining each creature of the Vampire Diaries and the originals in detail due to this universe having a much more complex mythology than your average supernatural series like Teen Wolf, where it's very straightforward. So sit back and relax and let's get into the world of the Vampire Diaries and talk about its unique take on vampires. It's important to note that I won't be covering all of the aspects of vampires from the Vampire Diaries in this video, including the minor details that you might find missing from this. It's only going to cover the most important aspects of Vampire Diaries in this universe. And it's clear that I emphasize important aspects because some people tend to let that fly over their heads a little bit while watching these types of videos. So with that all said, let's go. The vampires in the Vampire Diaries universe are spawned from more powerful creatures known as original vampires, creatures who were in turn provided their status through the use of very dark magic by way of the original witch. I'll explain what those creatures are in the next video in this series. Vampires are magically reanimated corpses which are inhabited by the spirits of the deceased person who closely resemble the living human they were before their transformation. Vampires feed and survive on the blood of the living, typically on that of humans, and they can also transform other humans into more of their kind by sharing their own blood with them. Vampires belong to what are known as sire lines. These sire lines are a direct result of the original vampires, with most vampires in the series that are shown being a part of Niklaus Michelson's sire line prior to the original season 3 when his sire line was broken forcefully. Essentially, if an original vampire is killed, their entire sire line is killed along with them, meaning every vampire ever turned by them, either directly or indirectly as a result, future vampires in the sire line turning other people are killed along with that specific original vampire. The way that vampires are created in the Vampire Diaries universe is similar to how humans are turned into vampires in Underworld. If you guys aren't familiar with that franchise, it's a movie franchise that deals with both vampires and werewolves going at war with each other. Continuing on with this though, a human who has consumed vampire blood in some way and has subsequently died with the blood in their system will be magically revived as an undead vampire, just like the vampire who sired them. The exact nature of the human's death is irrelevant to this process. The only condition that must be met is that the body has to be more or less intact and able to function once they reawaken in transition. Though the upper limits of physical damage upon a human body by which vampirism can recover has yet to be defined as of the end of the series or its sequel spin-off series. In order to complete the transition into a vampire, the person must then consume a significant amount of human blood, at least a sip's worth, within the next 24 hours or else they'll die. Vampires can only feed on human blood in order to complete their transformation. Animal blood or vampire blood is not sufficient to finish the transformation from human to vampire. However, in this case, human blood can include the blood of a human witch, as was proven by Alaric Saltzman and Camille O'Connell, who both completed their transformations by drinking the blood of witches, Bonnie Bennett and Vincent Griffith, respectively. Additionally, the blood need not from a live human. Caroline Forbes and Esther Michelson both completed their transitions by feeding on donor bags of human blood. And Vicky Donovan completed her transformation by drinking the blood of the newly deceased Logan Fell, who would then awaken a short time later to find himself in transition as well. A vampire in transition is neither truly living nor dead until they make their choice to either complete their transition or to abstain from feeding and ultimately die as a result. This puts the semi-vampire in a strange liminal space between the two states that can affect them in different ways. Until a person in transition drinks human blood to complete their transformation, they will not be susceptible to the standard weaknesses of a vampire, which we will get to towards the end of this video. Vampires have the capacity to be extremely feral, predatory creatures and can be more beast-like and savage than their human appearance suggests. They growl, hiss, snarl, and curl their lips back when provoked, baring their fangs as a sign of aggression when faced by a threat. Despite their nature, vampires are also capable of human emotions, such as compassion, love, and self-control. However, it's in a vampire's nature to be violent, and no matter what their morality or kindness, they will almost always resort to such acts if it's necessary for their survival. While vampires typically maintain their human personalities after their transformations, they are usually dehumanized to some degree. And due to both the violent tensions between witches, werewolves, and vampires, violence, tragedy, and death of some aforementioned groups, and humans caught in the crossfire seem to follow vampires wherever they go, even despite their best efforts to avoid it. Many vampires are inherently selfish and consider others, especially humans, to be inferior to themselves, as they see themselves at the top of the proverbial food chain. Even the most compassionate of their kind will often resort to cruelty and torture if it means protecting themselves and their loved ones from danger. However, vampires experience sensations and feelings much more intensely than humans, and as a result, they have a much more difficult time controlling their emotions, all of which are tied to their hunger in some way. Whenever a vampire is overwhelmed by powerful feelings, their faces become pale, and blood rushes into their veins surrounding their eyes, darkening them tremendously. Their canine teeth will lengthen into fangs, giving them a more predatory look to scare off or threaten their prey and to aid them in feeding on humans or animals. This intensification of emotions experienced by vampires also extends to their personalities as well, both the good and bad aspects of it. Due to their intensely emotional nature, it is not uncommon for vampires wishing to maintain self-control to document their lives after their transition in journals. Though they have consistently shown considerable powers in recollection of specific memories and dates, vampires still need to pursue their journals in order to reflect on their feelings and other minute details during certain events. Another function of the vampire nature is the ability to turn off their humanity in order to make it easier for them to emotionally deal with feeding on humans to maintain their immortality. Vampires, including some who have been cured, have used this coping mechanism, including Elena Gilbert, Damon Salvatore, Stefan Salvatore, Caroline Forbes, and Enzo, and have described the process as flicking a switch, which essentially numbs their emotions and disables their ability to be empathetic, allowing them to shut off painful feelings such as guilt, grief, and sadness, and turning off the part of them that makes them ashamed of their actions. Vampires with their humanity turned off often think of themselves as purely rational and logical and are not ruled by their emotions. They also have no problem feeding indiscriminately on whoever they please, either using mind compulsion to make humans forget the experience or killing them outright with no shame or remorse. From their portrayal on the show so far, it seems that many vampires are nomads of sorts who periodically move around from place to place to make sure their immortality and lack of aging do not lead to their exposure as vampires to the general public. Some of them appear to attempt to take on identities within the human world and exist alongside humans, while others instead appear to enjoy living amongst humans, mostly anonymously, without making human attachments, and then choosing to travel to new places for a change in scenery wherever the urge strikes them. Vampires are noticeably much stronger than supernatural hunters, immortals, and humans, and slowly grow stronger as they grow older. Even new vampires, who are still in transition, can toss an average-sized, fully grown human across a room with great speed and force. Their other feats include single-handedly lifting grown men high off the ground by the throat and snapping their necks, cutting off a person's head with their bare hands, and ripping out internal organs such as hearts with little to no effort. Their strength is also more powerful than that of werewolves in their human form, depending on the age of the vampire, and can be equal to that of evolved werewolves. Their strength allows them to jump higher and further than any natural creature. Vampires who feed on humans are stronger than those who feed on animal blood. Vampires are much faster than various other human and supernatural beings, such as supernatural hunters, immortals, and werewolves in human form. Vampires can accelerate their movements to cover short distances in an instant, usually faster than the human eye can see. When running across long distances, they appear as vibrating blurs of motion, allowing them to appear or vanish quickly and quietly. Their reflexes and dexterity are similarly heightened, allowing them to catch certain projectiles such as arrows and thrown stakes in the air with ease. Vampires possess superhuman agility such that they can react quickly, jump very high, climb, and run incredibly fast without difficulty or exhaustion. Vampires have extremely keen senses of hearing, sight, smell, and taste that far exceed those of humans and werewolves. They can hear whispered conversations, even ones in far buildings and on phones, though most vampires typically learn how to tune out most ambient noises when it's not necessary to hear them. Vampires can take a great amount of physical damage without being slowed down. Even vampires who have been shot with wooden bullets, which have a weakening effect on vampires, have been seen to continue fighting so long as they're not shot in the heart or in the head. Vampires still react to physical force in a human manner, particularly young vampires, who will occasionally be affected even by human strength level force. Vampires who can still be stunned and dazed by strikes and trauma, though their tolerance for it will increase as they get older. Vampires recover tissue from any form of physical damage to their bodies within seconds to minutes, though they still feel the pain of the wound before it heals. Vampires can snap their bones back into place after they have been broken and have been seen to fully recover from gunshots, stab wounds, and torso impalement very quickly, so long as they had consumed a regular diet of human blood prior to the injury. Those vampires who feed on animals will still heal much faster than a human, but their injuries, especially severe ones, will take much longer to heal than a vampire who feeds on human blood. The only injury a vampire can sustain that cannot be healed on its own or by consuming more blood is a werewolf bite, which requires Klaus Michelson or Holt Michelson's blood or a very rare scientifically created serum to cure. Also, a vampire's enhanced healing is limited due to physical damage to their bodies. Many forms of magical damage or psychological damage are far beyond its capabilities. Vampires cannot grow back any body parts, though they can reattach severed limbs with some effort. A vampire stops aging once turned. Upon their transformation, vampires become immune to all conventional illnesses, diseases, viruses, and infections, while vampires who were cancer-free as humans will be immune to cancer after they are turned. Those humans who were turned while they had cancer will not only still have it as a vampire, but their newly enhanced healing factor will accelerate the progression of the cancer cells over twofold, nearly always causing the cancer-stricken vampire to kill themselves to end the suffering. Vampires experience emotions more powerful than humans. Emotions like love, joy, happiness are magnified for vampires, allowing them to live life more intensely. This ability allows vampires to feel emotions at their peak regardless of their age. Conversely, sadness, depression, guilt, and fear and anger are also amplified, causing many vampires to become so overwhelmed that they turn off their humanity. Turning off their humanity allows them to block off more negative emotions such as fear and guilt, allowing them to feed on and kill without remorse, go against any opponent without fear, and relieve themselves of painful feelings such as grief, loss, depression, and shame. A vampire without their emotions is far more calculating and direct than one who keeps them on. However, the vampire can become a remorseless killer and are almost unrecognizable from the person they truly are, as blocking out negative emotions also cause their positive emotions to become dulled and non-existent as well. Vampires are capable of turning their humanity back on and bringing back their emotions, but it is difficult as a result of the fact that they will be bombarded with all the repressed emotions in addition to the guilt of anything they did without their humanity with enhanced intensity. This ability fades with time, and vampires who are over 500 years have said that they have lost the ability to turn off their humanity altogether. After time and practice, the overwhelming sensations of heightened emotions fade as the vampire learns to overcome their emotions without turning off their humanity altogether. Vampires have the ability to influence and control thoughts, emotions, and behavior, and can alter or erase memories. There is a sort of hierarchy as to how this ability works, and have a weaker form than that of the original vampires, and can only compel humans and not compel other supernatural beings, like for example, werewolves. Although rare among them, sire bonds can be formed when a human is turned with the blood of a vampire for whom they had strong romantic feelings before they were turned. Those vampires with a sire bond are supernaturally loyal to their sires to the point that they will go out of their way to do whatever their sire asks of them to do. even if they don't want to actually do it. However, this bond isn't affected, or it doesn't affect how they truly feel about their sire. It only affects their behavior. Vampires have a limited form of telepathy that allows them to easily enter the minds of humans, and with more effort, the minds of other supernatural beings. Other ways to weaken a vampire to use telepathy on them are to starve them or drain them of blood, inject them with vervain, or expose them to werewolf venom. It is one of the hardest abilities to master, and because of this, it is usually the last of the mind control related abilities a vampire learns after becoming proficient in mind compulsion. Vampires can also use their power of telepathy to control dreams and subconsciousness. This is an aspect of telepathy that is much easier to learn, and with it, a vampire has the ability to produce and modify dreams, bestow nightmares, and lucid dreaming, distort people's perception of reality, and trap someone in their dreams. Vampires can manipulate and enter the subconscious of other vampires, and even an original vampire if they are vulnerable enough. However, this is a learned skill that requires practice to achieve. Vampires also have the power to trick the minds of other younger vampires into seeing or feeling things that aren't actually happening. A vampire's true face is the appearance they are hiding under a normal human face. When a vampire's true face is revealed, the sclera of their eyes turn blood red, dark veins appear under their eyes as blood pumps forcefully through them, and their canine teeth extend into razor-sharp fangs. A vampire's true face can be revealed whenever they wish, but it will appear against their will whenever they are aroused by the scent of blood, or are feeling intense emotions such as fear, anger, lust, sadness, etc. A vampire's fangs are extremely sharp, which gives them the ability to tear into almost any substance and tear off limbs. A vampire's true face will appear for the first time either while they drink human blood for the first time or shortly afterward. With the fangs come the darkened veins under the eyes as well. Animal blood, while somewhat satisfying a vampire's hunger and sustaining their undead life, will make the vampire considerably weaker than they would be if they had drank human blood, causing their physical abilities to be inferior to a human blood-consuming vampire, making them heal much more slowly and making their compulsion less effective. Breaking a vampire's neck will not kill them, but it will render in a death-like state for varying amounts of time, depending on the diet and age of the person in question. If a vampire takes the cure, they will revert back to being immortal once again. Once taken, the cure prevents vampire blood from having any effect on them, as it will not heal their wounds, and if the vampire dies with the vampire blood in their system, they will remain dead and not awaken as a vampire in transition. Additionally, their blood becomes the cure once they have ingested it, making them a target to any vampire who wants to cure themselves. If the cure-laced blood should be drained from a cured vampire, that vampire would begin to rapidly age to compensate for the years they spent as an undead, unaging vampire. In the case of older vampires, this can cause them to age so quickly that they die in weeks or months if the cure has been drained from their body. Dismembering or manually removing the head of a vampire will result in an instant and permanent death. Vampires who abstain from blood for extended amounts of time will eventually desiccate and mummify. Witches can use magic to also desiccate a vampire. Vampires are highly flammable and are sensitive to fire and will quickly burn and die from it if the flames are not extinguished in time. This quality has been proven to be useful in disposing of the remains of a dead vampire without any physical evidence. However, in some cases, the vampires have used this vulnerability to their advantage. Removing the heart of a vampire will also result in a permanent death. Vampires cannot enter a home without an invitation by the owner. An invitation can be granted long distance and even by someone who hasn't lived in the house in years. Vampires are susceptible to the powers of witchcraft. This is inclusive of mythical objects such as the Gilbert device and dark objects. A siphoner can also siphon the magic from a vampire to fuel their spells. Witches have been seen to use magic to cause agonizing pain by inducing aneurysms in the brain and muscle spasms, telekinetically ripping out their hearts or snapping their necks, magically increasing their hunger for blood to unbearable levels, setting them ablaze with a single thought, and desiccating them to the point of mummification. Minor physical injuries such as gunshots, stab wounds, and broken bones will cause pain and also slow them down. However, this is momentary, as they will heal completely so long as they haven't been weakened by other means such as vervain or werewolf bites. There are various poisons invented by people such as Dr. Wes Maxfield and Aya Rashad that are capable of incapacitating or even desiccating a vampire when administered. Sunlight and UV rays burn vampires on contact, and prolonged exposure to them will cause them to burst into flames and die. However, this weakness can be mitigated by the use of lapis lazuli, which is a stone enhanced with a specific protection spell by a witch for a particular vampire, which is usually affixed to jewelry, which is usually, if not most of the time, called a daylight ring. It requires the vampire to wear the stone at all times minus the nighttime, or else if not wearing the ring in the day will result in them dying from continuous exposure to UV rays. If an original vampire dies, all vampires descended from their bloodline will slowly perish as well. Members of Klaus's bloodline were unlinked from him, thus they were spared upon his death, unlike Finn, Cole, and Elijah's sire lines. Exposure to or ingestion of vervain causes a vampire to become severely feverish and weak to the point that it can hinder their healing abilities as well. Also, physical contact with vervain will burn the vampire's skin. Vampires cannot compel anyone who has ingested vervain or has it on their person. Many vampires drink small amounts of diluted vervain to protect themselves from original vampire's compulsion and reduce its effects when used against them by other people and other enemies. The bite of a werewolf, which involves injecting toxic venom into the wound, is extremely lethal to vampires. It will cause them to hallucinate, grow severely weak, and go rabid until it kills them. Klaus Michelson, or Hope Michelson's blood, is the only surefire way to cure the bite. Lucian Castle invented an advanced strain of venom derived from the 7 werewolf bloodlines with no known cure. The venom is infused in the bite of an upgraded original vampire. Similarly, it is fatal to that of a werewolf or hybrid bite, although working twice as fast and more painfully. So it is so potent that not even the blood of Klaus Michelson or Hope Michelson can cure it, nor will the blood of an upgraded original vampire. Wounding a vampire with a wooden weapon such as wooden bullets will incapacitate them. It would take longer for them to heal their injuries than if the wounds were caused by any other substance. Stabbing a vampire through the heart with a wooden stake will result in an instantaneous, permanent death. It is said that if a vampire daggers an original vampire, they will die while the original vampire is neutralized. This, however, has never been proven, a unique weakness that rarely occurs under specific circumstances, although vampires cannot develop diseases, illnesses such as cancer, but if a human has active cancer and is turned into a vampire, the effects of the cancer will increase. The regenerative properties of vampire blood will cause the cancer cells to sporadically replicate and exceed normal stages of the condition. With that said, this video covered only the most important aspects of vampires in this universe that you need to know about. If you made it this far in the video, I would just like to say thank you so much for watching. It means a lot and I really appreciate it greatly. The next video in this series will be Original Vampires Explained, and it will drop next week. And with that all said, I'm Jades Corner. Make sure you guys have a great rest of your day or night whenever you're watching this. Peace, love, and positivity as always. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed. Don't forget to comment your thoughts on the vampires in the Vampire Diaries universe. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so that you guys can be notified every single week when I post a new video. And I'm going to get out of here. Peace.